Hi, folks. Dale York, Just Fish Outdoors. And on this week's show, I'm proud to have Mr. Tom Lang, who's the Texas Freshwater Fisheries Center director, as well as other things. He's got a multiple list of things that he's responsible for down there in the great state of Texas. And we're going to get him in here and we're going to talk about this new renovations going on the Edwin L. Cox Jr. Texas Freshwater Fisheries Centers down in Athens, Texas. So, Tom, come on in there and let's talk about these great things that are happening to this freshwater center.
Oh yeah, Dale. Well, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on and to share the great word, the good work that's going on here at the Texas Freshwater Fisheries Center. So, a little bit of background: the Fisheries Center was built in '96, and it is a 106-acre facility that is one of five working freshwater fish hatcheries owned and operated by Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. This freshwater fish hatchery, TFFC, we like to call it. TFFC is actually also has a visitor center as well as a recreational fishing ponds and wetland trail and tram rides and a host of exhibits. So this is the great place to take the family to learn all about all the great work that's happening to make wonderful fishing in Texas, right? So we get to tell the story of your fish biologist, right? So that's what's happening here at TFFC.
Yeah, and folks, if you've listened to the show many times, you really have to understand and know that I fish Texas a lot and am one of the very proud drum beaters of what the TPWD has done with their share lunker program, as well as their just in general management of these Texas lakes. It's just outstanding. There's not very many places you can go and catch 10-pound fish in a reasonable traveling distance to the center of the U.S. And as we all know, Lake Fork is near and dear to my heart. Me and a friend of mine, Randy Claiborne, who's a Share Lunker member, we're sharing or starting our 34th year fishing this fantastic lake. And you guys just continue to knock this thing out of the park with your management and the things you do. And, this freshwater center, oh my gosh, you've already had over 1.1 million visitors to this thing since it opened in 96. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what you're adding. I mean, gosh, you guys are adding all kinds of things like trout, new aquariums,
Oh
updated
yeah.
life support systems, just all kinds of things to this program. And when do you expect this to kick off and be open for visitors, Tom?
Well, we are working our tails off, as you can imagine, and thanks to many private donors and our friends at the Texas Parks and Wildlife Foundation, we're able to do this major renovation. A lot of it is happening through those contractors with the foundation, and a good bit of it's also happening from our own staff working their tails off and putting in a lot of elbow grease. So we're looking at next spring, spring of 25, to be able to be reopened for the public to come in, and it's a long wait, and it's a short time to get there. But I think they'll see just when they get here just how much amazing things have gone on. So when you come to visit us at TFFC, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to walk through our outside exhibits, and as you walk, slowly start to go downhill, and you realize that the first major large aquarium that you come to are small Texas streams, like hill country streams, and then along with that ecosystem is going to be a tank, and that tank is going to tell the story of, say, Guadalupe bass.
Oh, awesome.
And so it'll be a more specific story to that ecosystem, and we get to tell, Guadalupe bass are the freshwater fish, state fish of Texas, and
Right,
so
right.
we've had a 30.
And they're endemic to the state of Texas too, if I remember correctly.
Oh, they are. They're only found in Texas, and so we're also home to the world record Guadalupe bass, by the way, Dale. So that's a nice deal, since they're not found anywhere else.
Yeah,
but uh,
yeah.
but we get to tell the story of the 35-year restoration effort that our department has put into Guadalupe bass, but then all the other wonderful hill country stream species that go along with it, and then you move a little bit further downstream and you end up to some small ponds. and small community lakes, right? And so we see that, and you'll get to see those underwater, and you're a little bit deeper, and you see some of the types of fisheries you would see there. And along with those community lakes flow things like our neighborhood fishing program, where we stock trout and we stock catfish, but we also do a lot of different manipulation to waters to make different fish populations. And so we're going to have a really neat tank that's going to be called what we call the tri tank, but it's to show fisheries management. So in this one aquarium, you see the same water, the same habitat throughout, but it's separated to where the fish, different types of fish, are only in different sections, right? So you have different fish populations. This on one side, you may have some nice bluegill and some nice bass and some nice catfish. Another, you may have just catfish. Another, you may have a lot of small bass and some really big bluegill, right? Now, all of those things change because of management. And so, in that same water and fisheries management, the work that your biologists do with your fishing license dollars is say, how do we change this population to benefit the public, to provide the benefits to the anglers, right? And this tank is, this aquarium is going to be a place where we get to tell that story. And we do it through really regulations, habitat, stocking, which is all informed by research and science. And so that's what we do for you, our anglers. We put your dollars to use to answer questions, and with the answers to those questions, we go and make decisions on regulations and stocking and habitat enhancement, so we can make better fishing for everybody for decades to come.
You know,
Now, as you go,
I,
yeah, go ahead.
oh, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt there, but something I don't think the general public quite understands is the degradation a normal freshwater man-made lake goes through once it's built and filled, and the continuing management struggle to continue to make that lake viable and strong, ecologically, to promote fisheries and fishery numbers. And what a struggle it is for you guys. The longer the lake is alive, the tougher it gets, and the higher level of management that must be employed to continue to make that lake
Oh
really,
yeah,
really strong.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Dale. I mean, when you look at Texas, a lot of folks don't realize that we have one natural lake. That's it. One is Caddo Lake. All the rest of the lakes in the state are reservoirs.
Right,
They're all dammed rivers and streams. They're all made for specific purposes, typically for purposes other than fishing, right? They're made for municipal water. I mean, look at what our state would be if we didn't have reservoirs, if we didn't have this consistent water. We wouldn't have the population that we have. We wouldn't
right,
be able to
right,
support it.
right.
And so you have that. You have municipal uses, agricultural uses. Now, while these lakes were built, on top of those benefits, we can provide great fishing and recreational opportunities to enhance the quality of life. And by the way, Dale, make one heck of an economic impact in the great state of Texas. You know how many anglers we have in Texas?
I'm sure it's millions.
It's about 4 million anglers in the great state of Texas. And I'll tell you that the recent numbers show that they're spending about $11.1 billion a year in fishing expenditures.
Yeah,
$11 billion a year. And that's not economic impact, because those
right.
dollars roll over. The economic impact, we don't have those numbers quite back yet, but I assure you that it's in multiples of that $11 billion. So fishing is a big driver of the economy, and especially rural economies where we have a lot of these wonderful reservoirs. And if you don't believe me, why don't you go out west and ask some folks that live around OHIV what the fishing out there has done to their economy, right? So,
Yeah, that's kind of blowed up that whole neighborhood in that particular area.
so certainly it drives the economy, and it helps to drive the certainly quality of life. And even if you're not fishing, just being in a boat or being near the water really does something to heal your soul after being stuck in the office or in the factory, right, working your tail off. So so they're really important from a quality of life perspective, from a family perspective, economics, and we get all that, and we do our best to work and make that the best that it possibly can be for everybody. So back to the fishery center. As you go down further downhill, we have a tank that just shows spawning. It shows sunfish spawning, and see all the circles. And then we have a small reservoir exhibit. So we go a little bit deeper. You get a little bit bigger water, and we'll have paddlefish and buffalo and bass and catfish in there. And across from there is an alligator exhibit. And so we have alligators, certainly in Texas. And so we have some of those on display from out in our fisheries. And then as you go down, we're going to have our large reservoir exhibit. And right now, our alligator gar, we have two alligator gar that we typically keep in there that are original to TFFC. But those alligator gar are on vacation. They're actually out in Memphis at the Bass Pro Shops Pyramid in Memphis. Our friends at Bass Pro Shops have taken those fish on for us to take care of them while we're closed, so we could do the renovations we need to do. So they're feeding them and taking good care of them over there in Memphis. I don't think they've had them out on Beale Street, but I haven't checked in on them. We'll let them just have a nice vacation. But but across from that is going to become a brand new aquarium, 10,000 gallon, very large aquarium just on sharelunker, just full of sharelunker bass. And so when you submit a sharelunker to our program for during the collection season, it's the angler's choice. The angler can choose to loan that fish to us, and if they loan it, we spawn it and do the best we can to spawn it, and then return it back to the lake that it came from. Or they can donate it. And a lot of times, if an angler donates the fish, we'll still take that fish back a lot of times. But we do have the opportunity, thanks to that angler, to put it on display for other people to see and learn and be enthralled with big bass, or to do other research with that fish too. So, of course, that would also be after we would try and spawn it. But this year, we've had some folks that have offered to donate their fish, and so we're going to be able to put some of those on display. And you're going to get to see some of these 13-plus-pound bass on display right here in a big aquarium at TFFC as well. And
Yeah.
we got to put in perspective, don't we, Dale? How big is a 13-pound bass?
It's
How,
huge.
how
It
about
is huge.
how about bigger than 29 different state records? That's
Yeah.
how big a 13-pound
Yeah.
bass
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. I've been very fortunate to catch multiple fish over 10 pounds. And I can tell you, folks, a 7 or 8 pound fish is huge. But a 10-pound fish is just, I mean, it looks like a pig with gills instead of a tail. And the 13-pound fish that I've seen, they look more like a basketball with tail and fins than anything. They are just so thick and have such a girth on them. It is
Oh my gosh.
unbelievable how big these fish are. And I know Texas has just been blessed through hard work and dedication of the biologists as well as others to just continue to pump out these fish. It's just incredible.
And as you said, with these aging reservoirs, I think it's so much value comes from the habitat efforts that are occurring out there, which includes, by the way, partners like Friends of Reservoirs chapters. And anybody out there can start a Friend of Reservoirs chapter to make their lake better. Nonprofit Friends of Reservoirs chapter, your Bass Club, your Rotary Club, anybody can go and start a Friends of Reservoirs chapter and help to raise funds through a nonprofit to work with their biologists to increase habitat and make better bass fishing and make better fishing, period, and get into grants and those sort of things. So working with our Friends of Reservoirs partners, our new habitat and angler access program that we have with Texas Parks and Wildlife, and the funds that we put into habitat that way, includes, vegetation plantings, it includes structures, it includes additional woody debris. In some cases, it even includes some dredging and piers and access that way as well. And since I'm talking about vegetation, Dale, I think it's important to also note, if you didn't know, that here at Texas Parks and Wildlife, we actually have come out with a stance, a white paper, a stance on hydrilla, for instance. And we recognize that there are places where we certainly don't want hydrilla, but there are also a lot of places, especially in a lot of our reservoirs, where native vegetation plantings that we've tried to do are not as successful as we like to see them. And hydrilla can provide tremendous fisheries habitat.
Yeah.
But it's like anything in life. It's like ice cream. It's like beer. It's like anything in life, right? It's in the appropriate amounts, right? And so we
Right.
work to have those appropriate amounts. But I think that's a really neat thing when it comes that we're really proud of. That's been a recent change in Texas is, our stance on hydrilla and the benefits that it can provide for our anglers, and we want to manage it as such. not
Yeah.
eradicate it, but manage it
Yeah,
appropriately.
you know, among the many, many factors that the biologists as well as yourself have to fight or have to try to figure out is not only the vegetation but the water levels and how they fluctuate in these area lakes, and that can have such an impact on everything we've talked about. It can have an impact on spawn. It can have an impact on vegetation. It can have an impact on just every water quality, so many things that it can have an impact on that you guys have to figure out a strategy to try to combat that, to keep our lakes or to keep your lakes alive and continuing to be very productive. You know, we just went through you know, a year and a half down on Lake Fork where the lake was, you know, like what was it, like 5 feet below normal for a
Hmm.
period of time, and we lost some of the vegetation that was there. And now that it's back up again, you know, it really helps sustain the lake and make it a more fertile lake because all that vegetation that grew up while it was so low is now in the water. So those fish have a place to, the fry have a place to hide when they spawn. And, you know,
Hmm.
I'm looking for, you know, probably a pretty good couple of years coming up for Lake Fork as far as spawn
I,
numbers.
I think we're going to for sure. And you talk about 5 foot low. How about you cross the other side of I-35 and let's talk about water level drop, right? Let's go a little further west and
Yeah.
talk about managing Possum Kingdom when
Uh,
it's 15, 20 foot low,
oh my gosh.
and let's not even get started on uh, Ivy and Alan Henry and so forth. I mean,
Right.
when I first became a biologist for Texas Parks and Wildlife, I was in Wichita Falls, and we had 8 reservoirs go completely dry.
Oh my
8.
gosh.
And so
How do you recover from that? I mean, what do you do?
that's, well, I'll tell you what we do, Dale. We remember that we're playing an infinite game here. We're playing a
Right.
game that is, and I'm no longer the biologist there, but I always had to remember that regardless of whether I'm here or not there, wherever I am doesn't matter. There's going to
Right.
be a biologist there working to serve our anglers.
Right.
And it's about what I would say, I called it stocking the cupboard. At some point in time, the heavens are going to open and the rain's going to come down and it's going to refill. So, what can we do to be ready to make sure that when that does happen and we have the most important ingredient to making a good fishery, the most important habitat ingredient, water, right? When that
Right.
water comes back, what are we going to do to ensure that there's great fishing that comes along with it? And so we're always thinking about how we make great fishing, even when we don't have water. That's what our teams out there are doing and saying, here's the situation. Here's what we think the situation is tomorrow, next year, 5 years, and 10 years, and so forth. What are we doing today to help make great fishing down the road? And I'll
Yeah.
tell you, one of the things that we're doing here at Texas Freshwater Fisheries Center that we did just a couple years ago that I don't think a lot of folks know about, which is really exciting. We've talked about our share lunker program, and we've talked about how we spawn those big, beautiful bass with the male offspring, by the way, of previous share lunkers.
Oh
So
wow.
we've always been doubling down on big bass genetics. So we spawn them and we save a few of those back to make our males that we spawn with the females.
Oh, that's
Now,
awesome.
and we keep track and we keep them separated for no genetic bottlenecks and things. But so we've been doubling down on those big bass genetics. And by the way, of course, at our hatcheries, we also have a much higher hatch rate and survival rate to fingerling rate than they do in the wild, because we make the absolute perfect conditions for them. And we have more that hatch, and we have more that survive, and more that stock out in the wild, and they're supercharged because we're doubling down on big bass genetics. So we've been doing that, and we see a lot of that come back. We see really great stuff come back, like we look at Troy Johnson's fish. You might have heard me talk about that. Share lunker number 9. We're able to look and see 20 different fish, 6 generations of fish that have come back as relatives to that fish, which includes the lake
Wow.
record at Nacogdoches, the lake record at Marine Creek, the lake record at Coleman City Lake, and the lake record at Tyler State Park, all related back to that share lunker number 9, right? And we see these relationships, and we see more of those relationships. Now, what are we doing now? What is the big change we've been stocking pure Florida bass. And we've been stocking pure Florida bass since 1972. Okay. So you had pure Florida bass come on in 1972. You had progressive bass regulations, right? Like our first really strict regulation that we could ever imagine, 10 fish a day, 10-inch minimum length limit. Can you imagine why we would do such a thing? You know, who could, how could you restrict me so much? But we
Right,
did that. And then, of course, now we have like the trophy bass regulations like we have at Fort that
right,
produces such wonderful things and all that. And then these topping that off with Florida's, and you top that off with the Sherlunker program, and then you add to it our friends at like Lake Fork Taxidermy, who's a Sherlunker sponsor, and they start being able to create just tremendous replicas that are not skin mounts. And so those
right,
skin mounts, those thousands and thousands of big bass that would have become skin mounts, get put back in lakes to grow and
right.
to grow and be caught again and again and again, right? And so all those things come together, and that's one of the reasons we continue to have these great fisheries. Well, what's the next step in that? What's the next step of the things that we're doing? Well, I'll tell you right now, all those Florida bass, those millions of Florida bass that we produce and stock every year, are
Mm-hmm.
now Sherlunker lineage. Several years ago, some of the Sherlunkers, not all, but a good bit of them are pure Floridas. Not all of them are. Some are integrades or F1s, uh, but some of them are pure. We have held a few of those offspring back in order to completely convert what we call our brood stock. That brood stock is what we use. Those are the males and the females that we use to make all
Right,
the bass for the state.
right.
So the hundreds of thousands of Sherlunker offspring that we've been able to make, you start to see those come back as I talk about genetics and the impact that those have made alone. Now we're going to see not their first generation because those are Sherlunker offspring. Let's go back, but that next round of generation whose grandparents were Sherlunkers and so
Mm-hmm.
forth. Now we're going to have millions of them, and we call those Lone Star bass.
There you go.
Those are Lone Star largemouth bass. Those are pure Florida Sherlunker lineage bass, and that's what's being stocked. That's what Bodark has been stocked full of, and all of the Floridas for the last several years. This is the third year for it. Are Lone Star largemouth bass. Every bass that's getting stocked out of Texas, it's a pure Florida, is a pure Florida Sherlunker lineage, a Lone Star bass. So
Now,
that's
folks,
that's a
think
big
about
deal.
that. Yeah, think about that just a minute. For we've just went through the lineage, the genetics that the TPWD and Tom Lang and his crew are trying to achieve here, and think about the work and the massive effort that's going through to keep a program like this up and running for several years. I mean, this is quite an undertaking that Tom and his crew, as well as others, have bit off here. This is not something you're going to do in a year or two. This is a multi-year devotion to actually genetically engineering the fish that are put in these lakes to be as big and as bad as they can possibly be. And I for one, Tom, definitely want to take my hat off to you and your group for trying to maintain this and working on it and working so hard to maintain the quality of fisheries that I personally see every time I'm on Lake Fork. I mean, I see it. Where else can you go fish? And just about every time you swing the rod, you're 4 pound plus. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just amazing.
Well, I tell you, the other thing is it's us doing our part, using your license dollars, this inland fisheries division, and the 200 employees here doing our part with your fishing license dollars to make the best fisheries we can for current future generations, right? While conserving, our fisheries, our natives, and making great fisheries at the same time, helping the economy. It's us working together. And I'm going to tell you what, Dale. Not everybody has supported the Sherlunker the whole time, and it's had its ups and downs and issues. By the way, every one of the times there's not a good or a bad lesson. It's just a lesson, right? And so we just continue to learn lessons and get better and get better. And we're only able to do that because of that vital industry angler agency partnership. This is not the agency doing this.
Right.
This is the agency doing this in partnership, in conjunction with our anglers, and with our industry partners, right? Because you buy your fishing license, because you buy your gear, and then and as importantly, when you catch that fish of a lifetime, you call that hotline and you turn it in for us to spawn. Or when you catch that 8+ pounder, you pull out your ShareLunker app, which is free to download. You take the pictures and you send us those data, right? And you prove that you caught that fish on that public lake and you send us the data. And you take a second and you take a few scales off of that fish. And that's all we need, a few scales, 2 to 3 scales. Take the back of your pocket knife, scrape a few off, put them on a napkin and dry them out, and you mail that to us. And we attach that to your entry, those pictures, and we can do genetic work on that. And we can find out more genetics about that fish. We
Right.
can find out if it's pure Florida, if it's part Florida, part Northern, F1, what. We'll learn that. We'll also know what size it is now.
Yeah.
We can even tell parentage. We can even go back and look and see if it's
Yeah.
related to a
Yeah.
lunker, or if it's
Well,
related to a future lunker, or if it's caught again. We could
right.
tell you that fish, we could tell you if that fish at 8.5 pounds, 3 years later becomes a ShareLunker. We'll know that that fish was caught once at 8, because Dale York said when this was 8 pounds, I took great pictures and I sent it in data and I let it go because Dale York turned that in. Man, 3 years later, who knows? Trey McKinney's catching that sucker at 13 pounds and winning money off of it and happy, and they get to have another, fish of a lifetime. That's how it all works together, man. And I think that's just beautiful, Dale.
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
we all
Yeah.
work together for this common goal and just go have a great time and do with what's really the heartbeat of Texas and America, the outdoors, right?
Well, just the state of the lakes in especially Northeast Texas is proof positive that this program works. I mean, it takes everybody. It takes the angler, it takes the biologist, it takes, everybody participating to make this happen. But at the same time, when we buy our license, we provide the money to you guys, and then you guys are very intelligent how you spend that money, and the outcome is obvious. I mean, I just love fishing Lake Fork and have for 34 years, and
Yeah.
really haven't seen much of a decline in the quality of fish, if ever, that we've been catching in 34 years. I mean, we're still catching 8, 9, 10 pound fish today.
Yes, sir.
It's just amazing what you guys, in cooperation with everyone else, has been able to do in managing these lakes. And, people, I think, really need to understand that how important it is that everyone supports you guys and every way they can in order to continue to make this happen. Well, we're getting close to rounding up the show here. Tom, any last words you'd like to throw out there?
Well, I guess we better tell you a little bit more about TFC while we can. We just talked about some of the aquariums, but
Yeah, yeah,
we also have a dive theater, or we have a 25,000-gallon aquarium, and we do videos and then feed the fish, and people get to talk to the diver while they're underwater feeding the fish, which is really cool, especially when they take that goldfish and throw it up in the air like a tennis ball, and that big bass smokes it, like a Labrador would.
yeah,
Um, but we're home to, we have an antique lure exhibit, fisheries management exhibit and sampling. You can come see the top 10 ShareLunker exhibit. There's a lot of new exhibits that were put in and new aquariums as well. I'll learn about all of our hatcheries and the fisheries management work, and then also see the Texas Freshwater Fishing Hall of Fame, which is just amazing and chock full of folks from all different walks of life that have made a tremendous impact on freshwater fishing in Texas and beyond, really. A lot of them well beyond Texas, like R.D. Hull that founded Zebco, or Nick Cream and Ray Mursky and Lonnie Stanley, to Ed Bond that was the biologist that brought stripers to Texas and made Texoma the top striper lake,
oh
that
yeah,
it is.
oh yeah.
And so much of those tremendous works to folks like Shannon Tompkins and Ray Sasser and Mr. Crappie, Wally Marshall, and Gary Klein, and I could just go on and on,
Right,
right? And
right. Well, let's
so
tell the folks briefly, or let's tell the folks exactly where this center is located and
sure.
how they can view it.
So it's in Athens, Texas, about an hour southeast of Dallas, south of Canton, and just a little bit west of Tyler there. So, pretty short trip from a lot of our major cities, and that's a pretty simple way. You can look up Texas Freshwater Fisheries Center on Facebook, and every month we're putting out videos to show you all the great work that's going on. And aside from, by the way, aside from all those exhibits and aquariums, we have a tram ride. You can ride around in the hatchery and learn about what we're doing at the hatchery to make a difference, as well as see down into the lunker bunker and see where all those big fish come. And then, of course, the last thing is it just wouldn't be right if you came here and you didn't get to do a little fishing. So we've got several recreational fishing ponds, Zebco Pond, and we have all the bait and gear and tackle you need to come and catch a fish. In fact, Dale, I'll tell you, since we've been open since 1996, on average, every day that we're open, two people catch their very first fish here.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's something that we care a lot about and
Yeah.
certainly love.
Yeah. Well, if you ever
Uh,
need some volunteers, you know how to get in touch with me. And I'll be more
uh,
than happy to come down and help you out.
you come
Uh,
on down. We could use volunteers. We can use them now, even while we're closed. But certainly when we're open, helping take kids fishing and families fishing is a great deal. You're welcome
uh,
anytime, and all your viewers are too. Just give us a holler and sign up to volunteer here.
folks, I encourage you to check this place out because I know it's going to be absolutely awesome when it opens up. And Tom, I certainly appreciate you coming on the show today and sharing this information and giving us some great insights as to what you do as well as the TPWD does and TFFS. And I just, like I said, my hat's off to you guys for how you maintain these Northeast Texas lakes that I'm familiar with. I'm sure that all the lakes you maintain that way, but it's just an amazing effort that you guys put on, and I don't think you get enough praise for continuing to do that. So, like I said, my hat's off to you, and we sure appreciate you coming on the show.
Well, thank you, Dale, and y'all keep fishing in tight lines. Enjoy enjoy those fisheries we're working so hard to make, and maybe we'll see you on the water doing that. And before next time we come on again, tell everybody out there, do something important, change a life, take somebody new fishing.
There you
Okay,
go.
change their life.
There you go. I couldn't have said that better any myself. So thanks a lot, Tom. That was Tom Lane, Tulsa, Texas Freshwater Fisheries Director there, and we'll certainly get down there and see that thing when it's open. So we appreciate you coming on the show, and tight lines to you, and we'll talk to you later.